the young men that I have been talking to in particular, they don't hate Kamala Harris. They actually like her in certain ways. They just say they think the world was better and safer under Donald Trump. The economy was healthier. One other thing that keeps coming up too, that you don't hear a lot about in the national media, Dana, is a lot of young men are worried about global conflict because they are of draft age. That comes up over and over and over again in conversations that I've been having over the last few weeks.
It's really important for the Democratic Party to wake up to why they lost so much support among young male voters. And no, it really doesn't have much to do with the fact that we don't have a left-wing Joe Rogan. We actually did have a left-wing Joe Rogan. His name was Joe Rogan, and then he was pushed away by the left. But anyway, in October, Peter Hamby, the gentleman you just heard from, spoke to college-aged voters and actually found that many of them were really concerned that our foreign policy was quickly leading us to World War III. And they were terrified that if that happens, they might get drafted, and they didn't want that. And guess who they blamed for policies that were inching closer and closer to World War III? The Democrats. Now, that could be one big reason why young men are drifting so far to the right. But there are other reasons as well that I want to get to. But just for the sake of this conversation, let's stay on the topic of foreign policy, okay? Let's go to Ryan Grimm, friend of the show. He has pointed to the exchange between Kamala Harris and a call-in question on the Breakfast Club as indicative of the party's, look, people say messaging problem. I think it's way more than a messaging problem, okay? I think it's an identity problem. I don't think that we even know what the Democrats represent or stand for, to be quite clear. It's hard to message when the Democratic Party doesn't even have a leader at the moment. But with that in mind, let's watch.
My question for Kamala is, why are we, and I say we because my tax dollars is sending the money, why are we sending money to other countries when we desperately need it in our own country for homeless, housing, resources, for whatever? That is my determining factor if I vote for Kamala or not.
That's one of the reasons the America First rhetoric resonates, because nobody in America would complain about where money was going if American citizens' everyday needs were being met. So what do you say to that?
We can do it all, and we do. So first of all, I maintain very strongly America should never pull ourselves away from our responsibility as a world leader.
Well, according to Ryan Grimm, yeah, we are most certainly not doing that at all. Take a look.
Now, when liberals see America first, they read it as xenophobic and anti-immigrant. But Trump's supporters scan it as a promise not to waste money on wars and nation building while our own country crumbles. But the critique in that slogan, and expressed by that Charlemagne caller, makes an emotional link between issues that are treated as disparate and distinct by political operatives. The jarring price swings at the grocery store and at the pump, combined with the out-of-control wars and the surge of migrants at the border, combined to produce a visceral sense that our leaders in Washington were sacrificing the needs of regular people here in the United States. People's sense that the economy was being handled poorly by Biden was colored by the chaos overseas. And his rapt attention to Ukraine and Israel left little room for confidence that he cared what was going on back here. By pretending that the US could do it all, but then only delivering on the foreign wars, Democrats set up ordinary people to view it as a zero-sum competition.
That is exactly right. I thought that analysis by Ryan Grimm was spot on. And it's not just the resources that are being shelled out for foreign wars. It's also, according to Peter Hamby, the very real fear that young men are feeling that eventually, if things keep going in the direction they're going in, they might get drafted. We might bring the draft back. Now, it's not just young men who are drifting right. Preliminary exit polling indicated that Donald Trump opened up a 16-point gender gap between young men and young women. 56% of men between the ages of 18 and 29 voted for Trump, while just 40% of their female peers did so. But get a load of this, because for everything that we heard about, the gender wars and battle of the sexes, men are going to the right and women are going to the left. In this election, Trump actually managed to increase his support among women. Trump managed to improve on his 2020 performance among young women, despite that gap. In 2020, 33% of young women voted for him. And this time around, it was 40%. So he increased his support among young women by 7 points. Now, the gender gap is huge, of course, but Trump still improved with these young women. And the big question is why? Well, Mary Lee Bliss, who's the chief content officer at youth research firm YPulse, spoke to Axios and basically discussed the economy as the main reason why young voters were essentially shifting to the right. She says that our data indicates the economy is the impetus for the change. There was no question for us that the economy and how they were feeling financially in the months and even weeks before the election really were going to determine who they were voting for. I mean, look, this is not rocket science. It's the economy, stupid. It's very simple to grasp. So Gen Z voters have been crushed by high grocery prices. Obviously, we're talking about younger voters who aren't like in their high earning years yet. So when we talk about inflation, obviously the people who are most impacted by that are people who aren't making the most money, people lower on the socioeconomic ladder. And so they were forced to, deal with rising costs, a tightening job market, right? Because the whole point of raising interest rates, according to Jerome Powell, the head of the Federal Reserve, was to increase unemployment and decrease the buying power of American consumers. And that's why young Americans have it turns out that they have some pretty outlandish standards for like what they think they need to make in order to survive in our economy. But I think that this is really a sign of how much they're getting crushed by things like inflation. So financial services company Empower surveyed more than 2,200 Americans in September. And the Gen Z respondents who were born between 1997 and 2012 said they would need to make more than $587,000 a year to be financially successful. So look, it depends on what you identify or define as financial success. Like for me, financial success at this point is, am I able to pay my bills, which I am? And do I have a little bit of money left over to do fun things here and there? And to me, that's good enough. Like the big dream that millennials were sold when we were growing up, that we're gonna like live in big mansions as long as we go to school, get our education and work hard. That dream's long gone. Like I'm not even thinking about that. But for younger people, they see the cost of things going up rapidly, especially for housing. And to be fair, in order to purchase a home in a major city in this country right now, you probably do have to make, you definitely have to make six figures. But if you want to afford other things and live comfortably, that number isn't as outlandish as you would think. Okay, so that's how insane housing prices have been. But that is roughly 3 times to 6 times what any other age group said they would need. It's almost 9 times the average US salary, according to the Social Security Administration. And Rebecca Rickett, who's the head of communications at Empower, also told Axios that many people feel they're coming up short, with half believing they're less financially successful compared to others around them. The majority think prosperity is harder to achieve for their generation, which factors into the magic number people attach to their success. And I think that's absolutely right. And remember, one of the main avenues in which working class Americans were able to build wealth was through purchasing a home. And when you take that one avenue away from them, by not addressing the very real housing crisis that we have in this country, obviously, there's going to be a lot of resentment, a lot of anger, and a lot of fear, about what the future is going to look like for these folks. And it's possible that pressure is especially hard on young men who, think about what the traditional gender roles have been for men, right? They've always been thought of as the breadwinners, the providers. I know that that's changing. But we also can't discount the fact that there are young men who want to be the providers, who want to be the breadwinners. And when they're put in a situation where they feel like they're unable to achieve that, well, that's going to impact them. And that's going to lead to some of the resentment that I think we're seeing among young men. It's also possible that the way Democrats message about men is, insulting, toxic, they should maybe rethink it. And political beliefs are swayed heavily by identity. Eric Anderson says he's a marriage and family therapist. The left is rejecting men and masculinity, so men are becoming more right wing. So just some of the stuff to consider if the Democratic Party has any interest at all in improving and maybe considering why they were shellacked in this electoral cycle. I'm not going to hold my breath, but I hope I'll be pleasantly surprised. I guess we're going to have to wait and see.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.